Namco Museum Archives Volume 2. This is actually the second one of these I've done from Namco, and this title has two of the other games I reviewed previously in other compilations of games. Only worse. I say worse because I believe they're all just NES ports, so it won't be as colorful or won't sound as good as the arcade version. For example, the arcade version of Rolling Thunder is leaps and bounds better than the NES version. So is Battle City. So understand, when you're getting this, you're not getting the version that you might be coming here to play, assuming you played the arcade version and not the NES version. In this collection, there are 11 games. Galaga, Battle City, Pac-Land, Dig Dug 2, Super Xevious, Mappy Land, Legacy of the Wizard, Rolling Thunder, Dragon Buster 2, Mendel Palace, and Galapus. Normally in these collections I go one by one, talking about the ones I like the best to the ones that are the worst. But honestly, they kind of range from it's good to it sucks. So I'm going to break them down to good, okay, and basically terrible. Galaga, Legacy of the Wizard, Dragon Buster 2, and Galapus were pretty good. There was nothing here I would ever replay, but I do think Legacy of the Wizard had some interesting ideas, but it sure was confusing on what you needed to do. I liked how they let us choose our character, but it really sucked that you could just run out of magic power, and you had to die because you need money to heal at an inn, and there's no basic attack. Also, Dragon Buster 2 was interesting. It has you going through mazes which would expand on you as you walk through them, and it was easy to get lost, and I think as much as it looks randomly generated, I had it 3 times in a row where the dungeon was exactly the same. I found the key and the exit very easily because I knew where they were. Galaga and Galapus were just space shooters, with Galapus giving you more control of your ship. Then there's Dig Dug 2, Super Xevious, Battle City, and Rolling Thunder. Dig Dug 2 had an interesting idea, but the execution wasn't great. It lets you put holes in the ground to make an island break away and kill the enemies, but the lack of freedom where you put the holes kind of took away the fun. It has very specific places you can put holes, and if you use them all up, you're out of luck, and you have to hope the enemies just decide to kill themselves, which eventually they will. I mentioned that Battle City and Rolling Thunder were lesser versions of the arcade machines, but Battle City had an interesting hook. It would let you choose your level before you start. You could even make your own level. I have no idea how you change the icons to make it, but I appreciate the thought. Super Xevious was interesting as it's basically like 1942. Even with the rewind feature, it was still very difficult. Now let's talk about the 3 worst ones, which were Mappy Land, Mendel Palace, and Pac-Land. Mappy Land was almost okay, until it gets into some terrible platforming sections. These vines were just awful, and the change in the gameplay was unnecessary. As a simplistic collection game, it was okay, but when it tried to break out of that, the cracks in the controls started to show. Mendel Palace was actually made by Game Freak, and it's a good thing that Pokemon thing worked out, because this game is a confusing mess. I think you have to flip over the floor tiles to push the bad guys into the walls. It was so dull, and even with the different powered up tiles, it never became interesting. The worst though was Pac-Land. This did everything wrong. It has Pac-Man as a platformer, but instead of using the directional keys, you use the A and B buttons to move right and left and use the directional keys to jump. Why would you do this? It made no sense. It has you avoiding ghosts until you get to the end, where you stop at a church to rest. So that means there's religion in Pac-Man's world? Does that mean the ghosts are cast-offs of heaven? They chose to put a church there, so it has to be saying something about the world that Pac-Man is inhabiting. Worse yet, after poorly platforming to the right for a few levels, you have to float jump your way to the left. And I don't know why they float jump, it's just something that happens. It becomes unplayable. It never explains anything that is happening. You're just expected to figure it out. There were instructions in each of these games. It was a very simplistic look at the world and then the controls. There were different backgrounds you could choose to change it up if you want to look at different things on the screen for all the games. And there were 4 save slots in each game, so you could save at any time if you want, if you don't want to beat the game in one day, or if you're trying to get your highest score. Plus there was a rewind feature to help you out, and it mostly worked. The rewind feature was a bit random on how much it would rewind. Sometimes it would rewind a second, and other times it would rewind like maybe 5 seconds. I don't think you had any control over it. There were no making of any of these games or early designs. It feels like the most bare bones collection they can make. Namco Museum Archives Volume 2 was okay at best. There was nothing here I would ever go back to play. It's counting on nostalgia for the titles in this collection. This was normally $19.99, but I picked it up for $4.99, and I think that's a fair price for this. There just isn't that many good games in here. You'll think back to your childhood and play them once or twice and never again. So if you have any interest in this title, please wait for it to go on sale.